This is the Rising Goddess Podcast, and I'm your host, Michelle Torrance. This is a space where when we start diving deep, we're talking spiritual, mental, and physical. We're getting real and connecting with ourselves and others in the most intimate ways. We'll be talking all things sacred sexual, relationship building, womb healing, connection, and connecting with and through our bodies, how to use our sexual and sensual energies to create, manifest, and heal our lives in our individual and collective ancient feminine lines, while intertwining our healing and connection with the divine masculine. We'll learn from amazing humans who take time and share their wisdom and sacred healing magic. Rising humans who are here in this world to be healers, teachers, guides, priestesses, warriors, shamans, and all divine sisters and brothers in rising. We'll get witchy, sassy, sexy, and saucy, talking all things that align us with our true nature and authentic selves, creating a community of divine feminine and masculine rising to be a massive part in this shift of world healing. So grab some green juice, light some cannabis, get your blankets, or sit by the fire. Let's rise up together. Catch you on the inside, dolls. Hello, my beautiful rising humans, and welcome to this next episode of the podcast. I am excited again. Every single episode, I'm going to tell you how excited I am because that is the way we should be living life. But this episode, I'm really excited because we get to speak with Nadine Lee of Tantric Alchemy. And this episode, I got to be honest, I was a little nervous going into the beginning of this interview. And you might even hear my voice a little bit shaky or maybe sounding a little bit different because for me, trying to gauge the energy and support my guests with their energy that they present is really important to me. And, sometimes a girl can be like, what up? And all bright and super loud and bold. And other times it's important to be more fluid, a little bit more quiet. And Nadine's energy is so empowering and so high vibrational, and her energy is so fluid and flowy, and she just embodies Shakti all through her existence, and I feel it. And so a little bit nervous going into it, and then settling into the calmness of just her energy and her just being real and so absolutely wonderful to speak with. And so if you're not familiar with Nadine, first of all, make sure you follow her on Instagram or any of her social medias at Tantric Alchemy, and all of that information, of course, will be in the show notes. But Nadine grew up in mainstream society. She ticked all the boxes of society's expectations of her. She finished university, ended up working in women's fashion, magazines, and advertising. She was exploring these realms of unhealthy femininity, superficiality, and the emphasis on external beauty, but it only reinforced her battle with eating disorders and depressions. She spent over 4 years in the corporate jungle after she bravely answered her call of her heart towards her passions of holistic health and yoga. She began as a qualified nutritionist specializing in women's eating disorders and body image. But she ended up finding her missing link, which was always in sexuality. From there, she was introduced to the temple arts of Tantra, and then she later spent much of her time in India, training in Tantra, yoga, and dance. So for the past 9 years, she has been devoted to transformation and has apprenticed with shamans, tantrics, and spiritual teachers. Her current work has taken a niche into the feminine tantric practices, including conscious menstruation and feminine sexuality. So she is just the epitome of the teachings of what we are here at the Rising Goddess podcast. She has been working with conscious menstruation and womb wellness for over 5 years, and it completely changed her life. Her gifts were awakened. She healed her body issues. She birthed her business, and she called in the most transformational relationship to date, which she feels more balanced and at peace in general. Her passion really now lies with empowering women back to their self-love, honoring of the natural cycles of life and nature, and breaking down sexual and societal conditioning of the mind around such taboo topics like menstruation and sexuality. And we talk about this a lot here on this podcast because it is so important. That's why I really was so excited to connect and interview and have her energy in this space, because her energy she just embodies the healing of these things. And as we heal our relationships with our menstruation and our sexuality, we really can heal the collective and start to open up communication and really start to heal so much more. She knows that when we bring consciousness to such natural bodily functions through ritual and reverence, the essence of Tantra begins to naturally awaken us to our power, which is a depth of understanding ourself beyond physical and our innate feminine wisdom. And we are going to be diving deeper as we continue to grow in this podcast. We're going to continue to dive deeper into tantric philosophies and how really the main basic philosophy of Tantra is every single thing is a spiritual experience. Right now, listening to me talking is a spiritual experience. So this is going to be really exciting. So sit back, enjoy this episode, and come join us over on the Rising Goddess podcast page over on Facebook. And let's continue the conversation. So have a wonderful experience. Later. All right. Hello, everybody. We are here with the beautiful Nadine Lee, Tantric Alchemy. This has been an interview and a chat I have been extremely excited for. I was just expressing to her how much of an inspiration she is to me, as well as to many humans out there. And so I'm really, really excited to share her wisdom with you, and to just have an amazing conversation with everyone, to open up your minds and allow just some different perspectives and love to penetrate you. So, Nadine, I always love asking my guests one question in the very beginning, and that is, what do you love about being a human right now in this time and space?
Oh, that's a good question. First of all, yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, the best thing about being alive now is I feel, yeah, it's a very radical time of transformation that's happening right now, you know, with the collective consciousness, awakening technology. You know, lots of things are really just changing really, really fast. And yeah, it's just exciting to be a part of that and anchoring in what we're here to bring in to support that shift in consciousness and the evolution of our species at this time.
I love that. And I know that's something that excites me every single day when I get up in the morning. It's how can I help advance humans, including myself, all the time. So share a little bit about with us, who was Nadine growing up? How did you transition, or did you transition into Tantric Alchemy? Has this always been a part of your life? You are a very sensual being, or did an event happen where it kind of shifted and awakened you to this experience?
Yeah, you know, I've been really tuned into the link between sexuality and spirituality since as young as I can remember, being 6 years old, you know, questioning God, who is God, and having an awareness around, you know, other realms and the spirit realms, and wanting to, you know, commune with that realm. And but then also that sexual energy was always really strongly connected with the spiritual energy. So it feels like it's always just been a part of my life. And, you know, I went through my childhood and teenage years just in mainstream society, going to, you know, living in the suburbs, working class parents, you know. But when I was 14, I had an experience, a Kundalini awakening experience, that it was triggered by, it was just spontaneous, like it wasn't, you know, induced by any drugs or practices. And it left me in a satori kind of state for 3 days. So from that experience, it was like what people describe about ayahuasca and these experiences that like blast your consciousness open, and then you don't look back at, you don't look like at the world in the same way. Like that really opened up a lot, but I didn't really have the tools then or the awareness of what was going on, because it was a really confusing time. So but yeah, it really blasted me open, like in the upper realms. And from that experience, I kind of experienced a disassociation between my body and my spirit. And so I spent like most of my teenagers years pretty disconnected. Like I would say it was like a disassociation feeling. Like I was functioning, but it was, I experienced extreme paranoia, like extreme anxiety, depression. It was manifesting in all these other ways, just the unable to cope with that surge of energy. And so when I was early 20s, I discovered yoga and tantra and the power of sexual healing and the womb and the yoni. And that was the link for me to really come back into my body and integrate the spiritual energies into my body and into the physical world to really, get on my path and share what I'm doing in the world now.
I love that. And I love that so young, you had a sense of what your true nature was as kind of who you are and what was a true alignment for you. And I can imagine at 14 years old, having that experience, that awakening that put you in this different state for a few days. I can imagine that being a scary experience. Did you feel supported in your family? Did they foster any sort of growth in that way? Or because it manifested more into depression or extreme paranoia, did you find that your family was more moving into maybe like trying to cover it up with pills or medicate with pills? Or did you find more support with natural healing and trying to move through that until you got to yoga?
Yeah, my family was supportive. Like my mum, she was the main one, like through it, and my grandma actually, but we had like a history of like mental illness in the family, and they saw what happened when you go on the pills and go into the psychiatric system, and they were like, we're not doing that. And it was kind of like just all that was done was just holding acceptance and like holding a loving space for what was happening. My mum didn't really have the capacity to answer some of my questions but she just held love, and she didn't, like, I've heard this experience happening in like India and stuff. And if that happens when you're young, you get taken to an ashram and they deal with it that way. Whereas like in the West, it's like you get taken to a mental institution.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah. So yeah, my parents didn't know where to take me because they didn't know of any ashrams or like even really yoga. Like mum was always tapped in, but not really delved into it. It wasn't her like community, like the spiritual community or anything. So she just held space for it, no judgment, just let it kind of unfold.
I love that. And I think it's the no judgment that really gets to me. I know my personal experience just going through the household, it was very much conditional, conditional love and judgment and criticism. And so hearing a family support and not instantly go to pills for the first thing, for the first answer, it's just lovely to hear that. So kudos for mom and grandma.
Yeah.
So I've been searching through and for all of our listeners out there, I know Nadine will give us her contact information on Instagram, but she's got such beautiful words that she posts and a lot of the wonderful things that she talks about. And one of the beautiful things that I love reading about and what she promotes is menstruation magic and sacred semen. And I read this and I'd love for you to kind of go a little bit deeper on your menstruation magic and why you feel menstruation is magic, because I fully support that 100%.
Yeah. So as I said, my journey with coming back into like the body and integration in a way, it was through the lower centers. So like through the sexual energy, through sexuality, through menstruation, through body image stuff. And so I've found for me, like, that has been such a critical part of my journey into integration and just, integrating like the feminine. It's the feminine energy. It's that like, consciousness is like that vast energy. And then the feminine is that like the physical, it's manifested into the physical world, into forms. So working with the womb has been really about grounding these concepts into my body so I can birth what I need to do here in the world. And really about, it's a shamanic process for me, I feel, and what I teach. It's like each month we're going through the 4 phases of nature, you know, like the 4 seasons. We're going through a cyclical experience each month. And when we bleed, you know, it's this time of a shamanic death and rebirth each month. So it's like the spiritual concepts, you know, that we talk about and stuff. It's like actually happening in our bodies, in our wombs each month. And I feel it's a really powerful way to feel embodied, in not just like, oh yeah, like we're going through a death rebirth process and thinking about it in the mental sphere. It's like, no, this is actually happening in my body. What is my body releasing each month? And what am I calling in each month to fill that space, to birth from my womb? You know, we birth children from our womb. We birth all our creations from our womb. And, you know, it's also about conditioning. Like what I feel what I'm doing with sharing it is really about breaking down conditioning that we have around, I mean, like periods being taboo and blood being like disgusting and all these things that are so embedded in the psyche that once we just bring it into the light, it's like about reclaiming, like the feminine and releasing that taboo and normalizing just natural sacred events that are happening in our bodies, which for years have been shamed. And that's what's like, you know, binding so many people, like in just, if you're shaming your body and your natural sexual essence, it's like that's the core of everything.
Oh yeah, I fully agree. And that's where I know that I've really taken a passion and a purpose of really releasing that shame, and really connecting with our cycles. And I know that more and more women out there are starting to kind of tune in. And I have a personal mission to get rid of like terms like Shark Week or Hell Week or things like that, because I feel it's such a beautiful experience. And I mean, for me today, I just, you know, my cycle, I'm day 1 today. So I get to experience this with the full moon energy. And it's really a true, beautiful experience to shed and release. And then, like you just stated so beautifully, allow yourself to call in to feel what is no longer serving for you, fill that space and birth the creation of something beautiful. And I love that. And you mentioned, you know, a death and rebirth. And I feel like I written down some notes that I wanted to talk with you about that. And I think that transition to, I feel like the fury and the power of Kali is coming through right now. And it's such a beautiful experience that for me personally, no longer being afraid of the death and deconstruction, because knowing that is a huge major part of the reconstruction. And so I wanted to get what your thoughts are, what your feelings are on the power of this fury that's coming through right now, or the tapping in with Kali rising up. How do you feel with all that? How does that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really connected with Kali. That's been, so I work with the Tantric goddess archetypes, and that's a big part of my work as well. And even like bringing those archetypes into the menstruation magic, like the cycle, you know, the 4 seasons, and there's like the 4 archetypes of the feminine, like with the goddess archetypes. So the week before we bleed, I see that as Kali, like that archetype is strong, because it's like, you know, you're shedding the womb lining, literally shedding physically, and then emotionally and spiritually just shedding what needs to be released. And it's like the more we hold on to and try and resist that shedding process, then the more we're going to, you know, have that suffering that manifests in like cramps and like emotional chaos. And I feel that's symbolic of life. It's like we're constantly dying and rebirthing each moment. Every cell is like rejuvenating. And the more, and it's just like ideas that come in, or identities or attachments, like we need to be fluid in our, you know, it's like being of this world, in this world, but not of it, you know, like not like fully engaging, but not like attaching to things. And and Kali is needed to slay away like what's not serving it's that fire transformation. And especially in these times like what we're living in now, where so much is really radically changing. It's like Kali is like on fire, like literally just like burning through.
Yes.
Like
I love it. And that's why I really wanted to get your take on it. I know that I love watching and coming through, seeing you doing your Shakti dances, and really talking about the fire and everything. And I really feel like, Kali, again, like you said, right now in these times, we are really in this autumn phase, I think, in our humanity in this world rising. And, you know, we are going through this shed, and people are reaching us. Well, the patriarchy is definitely seeking and reaching and grasping and trying to maintain control. And they can feel it, that it's coming away. And I had a channeled post the other day where I just, you know, I kept saying she's awakening, and no, gosh, she is here. And it's just beautiful to feel that. And I also was really curious about, you wrote an article or post the other, I'm not exactly sure when, but it was regarding the power of the feminine surrender, and not submission under dominance. And I think this is something that is really kind of important, I think, for a lot of, at least my listeners, women right now. What we're kind of tapping into is learning that surrendering as a female or whatever to your partner, is the feminine energy to your partner. You can surrender and have a beautiful, blissful, amazing experience, but you're not submitting under a dominance. You're not doing it out of a codependent state. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more, share with our listeners just a little bit more your thoughts on the power of the feminine surrender, but not the submission under dominance. It was just so intriguing for me.
Yeah, it's been triggered a lot lately because I'm seeing a lot of this, you know, in the spiritual communities, there's this wave of BDSM and, you know, shibari, and I think it's beautiful art forms, but it's like people are kind of seeing that is the way to surrender in a way, and the teachers of that, and I'm just looking at it, I'm like, that's not surrender. Like, I mean, yeah, you can surrender, but it's through a submission. And it's like you can beat someone into submission, into surrender. And I feel that is patriarchy, old paradigm. And maybe it's coming through to purge out, because I feel the ultimate surrender is the bhakti, like the devotional. It's like that surrender to love and to a greater power than ourself. And that comes through trust and safety and feeling loved, and not this like power play, you know, like, so if you like, in my experience, the greatest surrender I had to a man, like, was through that. It was like, I felt so deeply loved and truly, like, you know, just safe and cared for. And I fully surrendered, and I'm not going to say it was blissful surrender. It was painful, like really, like, and then after that process of because I surrendered so deeply into this, like, into love, like, it's like, holy shit, this person knows so much about me, and he knows everything, all those corners. And so you feel so vulnerable. And, you know, it's still like an unraveling process around that of, scared to open again. But it's like, I feel that those conditions are that's just been my experience. Like, I've experienced the whole like dominance thing, and it feels like kinky and fun, but it's not like, it doesn't feel pure. Like, it feels it feels forced, or like more of like an expectation. And my husband and I, we've been together 17 years, and we've gone through quite a bit of transition and change and evolving in our personal sexual life. And I know we talked the other day regarding expectations, and how women feel a certain expectation, and when they remove that, when the male or the masculine, however it is, not talking genders, but feminine, masculine, and whatever,
when they hold that container, that safety, like you were saying, feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling confident within that loving relationship at that time, that surrender, that vulnerable experience helps them remove the expectations, and then that they rise up. And my husband has felt a shift in his own personal sexual experience just through my personal growth and tapping into more of the sacred sexual relationship and partnership of that. And it's wonderful to hear, and it's wonderful to see the masculine do that. And this ties into really another question I have. You use the term dark masculine and dark feminine, and it was very intriguing for me because I know right now what's hot in the streets is toxic masculinity, and I'm curious as to your difference between the dark masculine versus the toxic masculine, and what that difference is, and how the dark can be an amazing experience for the light to shine through. I'd love to hear that.
I feel the dark, the toxic masculine could be in the light masculine as well. It's just the shadow of both. So like the healthy dark masculine would be, that energy of the man, or that energy, it's not a man, it's in a woman as well, but like that energy of, penetration, like knows what he wants, like clear in his vision, very like doesn't follow the mainstream. He's not a sheep, he's just like, goes for what he wants. But like the toxic of that, the shadow, if it's out of balance, could be penetrative without kind of any awareness or any love, and it can become kind of like a rapist energy, like a steady kind of like, I'm going to get what I want, I'm going to cut through anyone, that kind of shark energy, so there's that, I feel. And then the light masculine, in the shadow or toxic, could be a man that's just got weak boundaries, and he's really the nice guy, but like doesn't honor himself. He's just a people pleaser, whereas if he's in the healthy light, would be like that father energy, like the divine father that holds the container but has his own, and he's giving but also has his own boundaries, and healthy boundaries and compassion, and goes for what he wants, I guess, but not at the expense of others. That would be like a toxic dark masculine energy, So it's that balance. So it's a power. I feel it's power. It's like, how do we truly use power in a healthy way? And we don't really have many role models of that. What we see is abuse of power and power over dynamics.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's like, the examples we have.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think the examples, and that can tie into any sort of, whether it's just the sexual energy, or it's financial money, or any sort of unhealthiness, or the power, how having that unhealthy power, that toxic power. I had an experience in a Facebook group the other week, and I actually did an episode on this, and I wanted to get your take on it as well, moving from the toxic masculinity and all of that. I had an experience in a Facebook group where I saw female gender species making a post with a picture of the male species, and it was a pretty derogatory post of like, oh, yeah, no, you're not gonna, I don't want you, you're not that cute, or something to that effect, that energy. And then there was an entire row of the female gender coming in with more toxicity running through. And I wanted to know what your take is on do you feel that toxicity is still, or the patriarchy is still leading and conditioning the woman herself, and do you feel that that's running rampant through, or do you feel that that's kind of getting pushed out through like the Me Too movement that was really kind of starting back then, that loudness and boldness of that? But do you feel that there's still a lot of toxic energy, or toxic feminine, I guess, or just the patriarchy still leading the woman in their decisions?
Yeah, well, I feel it's ultimately the toxic masculine within women as well. Like, so we don't really even, we're still figuring out, like, it's the feminine energy is coming through, and we still as women have conditioning of our toxic masculinity. So there's this inner battle that's going on within society, but it's essentially within us all. It's like, so how do we honor, like, live every day in a balanced masculine feminine? All we really know is masculine. Like you know, I went to an all-girls school, like, growing up, and it was masculine, like patriarchy. It's like, you know, training us to be like men, basically, even though it was all women's school. So, you know, like the subjects like art and dance and the feminine type subjects were always very not even regarded. Like, even when you rank, like at the end of when you get your end score, it's like each subject has a weight of how much it will influence your overall score. And the feminine subjects were really low, but things like maths and economics and science, if you did well in them, that, you know, impacts your overall. So it's like basically saying to us, like, if you rely on your feminine, like, you're not really going to get anywhere in life. You're not going to get into uni or college. But if you do well in your masculine, like, intellect, then you're going to excel as a woman and you're going to be the next, you know. But it's like a masculine kind of approach, like,
and
of that.
But that forward hustle, right? That linear, like, go, instead of the allowing of the flow to come through, the allowing of the creativity. And I think that, you know, it's so funny that you say that, because I have a daughter she's really focused on really getting a 4.0 and, you know, and all of these advanced and very masculine classes, but she's also very balanced in her theatrics and her music, and she doesn't dance very well. She'll tell you that one. I just tell her to let loose and feel free. But you know, it's interesting to see it coming, because she's very also tuned into the balance of her masculine and her feminine within. And so that kind of leads me into my next question, and is, you know, how do you personally, whether through ritual or daily rituals, or how do you go about to really kind of tap in and harmonize your internal masculine and feminine, and apply that in your daily life and in your relationships?
Yeah, well, it's through the menstruation work, and that's essentially what it's all about. It's like creating balance. So it's, you know, we're working with the menstrual cycle, so it's a feminine aspect, but it's what I teach is, and really encourage, is like, so when we're bleeding, the first 2 weeks of, so when we're bleeding, we're in our yin phase, you know, we're really in that inward phase, and that's the time to go into the inner realms and that feminine space of just being and listening deep within. And then, you know, as the month goes on, the next 2 weeks, we build up that energy to ovulation, and that week is really when, you know, we're ovulating, so we've got a lot of energy and our hormones are peaking, and that's when we're in our most yang phase. So through the month, I'm going through this cycle of half is yin, half is yang, but then also breaking that down into every day. So like every day I feel I go through kind of mini, you know, menstruation. It's like the energy starts like low, and then it peaks during the middle of the day, and then it tails off. So in the morning I'll be really, really in my yang, like really doing a lot of like mental activity and engaging. And then in the afternoons, it's like that's when I'm in my feminine, the yin, and just really winding down and play and, you know, connecting with community, so more feminine. And I feel it's just daily lifestyle, like that's really balanced a lot of it. And the menstrual cycle is like a blueprint for that.
Yes, I love that. And you know, it is, every single day is like a little miniature menstruation. Like it's a shed. And I think one of the beautiful things is finding that grace within ourselves each and every day to allow ourselves to be in the space that we're in. And I know yoga helps me with that. And when I feel like I'm outside of my space and I need to align myself, I just take it to the mat, whether it's for 15 minutes of breathing or even if it's just a shavasana for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. And thank you so much. There's so many things I would love. I could sit and just ask you questions for hours, but I wanted to have you touch on a little bit on yoni eggs. I know you work a lot with yoni eggs, and I have a lot of listeners out there who are super duper curious with them. I myself am very new, so I'd love to get just a little bit of your wisdom on why yoni eggs are so special and how they can help with transitioning or becoming more alive within our own sensuality and connecting with our sexuality with them.
Yeah. Yeah, the egg's been a really powerful tool, the Yoni egg, for so working with the menstruation, like with the blood and doing rituals and reconnecting to the blood, power of the blood and just the entire cycle. But then also another tool that's been critical for me and for what I work with is the jade egg. And yeah, it's just basically an ancient Taoist practice that, that's been used for centuries, that in ancient China the women would use, and they were basically, it had the awareness around the power of sexual energy and how it would maintain their youth. So a lot of the Taoist practices and the tigress practices are around that. It's like using that sexual energy for maintaining your youthfulness. And it's because we're not, the practices help circulate our sexual energy throughout the body, throughout the chakras, not just stuck in the lower chakras. And once we have that flow, it's like maintains that youthfulness, and our life force sexual energy is not leaking out, it's being contained in our bodies. And that provides so many benefits in like all areas of our physical body and emotional and spiritual body. But yeah, basically it's an egg, a stone. I use and sell the nephrite jade,
Okay.
the jade egg, and you just use it as a supporting tool that, with breathing practices and some energy circulation practices and yoga poses, and it goes inside your yoni, your vagina, and it's basically about toning the pelvic floor muscles. So and with that it's releasing any subconscious energies that might be stuck in that region as well. So it's activating the mula bandha in yoga. It's like it's activating that, and when you do mula bandha, like that pelvic squeeze, that really clears out things just in the subconscious, all to do with the lower chakras, like the first two chakras especially. And so the egg really hones in on that spot, and it's like really clearing out, because even just wearing it and meditating, your body, your yoni is like doing micro mula bandhas. Even if you don't do any practices, I find it can be just as powerful. Just having the egg in and doing a meditation, it really activates the mula bandha and gets that life force energy flowing and circulating through your body. And it's really powerful practice, because the pelvic bowl and the PC muscles, like if they're loose, then all the organs, like the vital organs, our ovaries, our womb, that's where our kidneys, all our vital energy is stored, and that energy can leak out. And so if it's not about like making it tight, it's about toning those muscles and the energetic portion of it as well, so that that life force energy is being contained in your body, not leaking out. And when it leaks out, that's when women lose way too much blood and have really like clotted periods and really painful, and men have really thick semen. And so it's about, once we work with that toning of that area, it reduces the loss of blood and the desire for men to also, like, men don't use jade eggs, but it's just the same thing, like
right.
them like them not wanting to even needing to ejaculate as much because that energy is being circulated through their body.
Okay.
So it's really the key to a lot.
Yeah. And, I think really the thing that just really speaks out to me is it's just really focusing in and the egg, of course, with the energy and the the energy of the stone and just the energy of everything. But it's really focusing on that area of your body where so many of us as a collective aren't focusing on it. And that's bringing awareness and then really just starting to build that relationship with it. So I love that so much. And so I know my husband he's like, let's get all the eggs and wands you want. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, babe, let's do this. It's very supportive.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay, so before we have some fun little questions, I want all of my listeners to know, where can they reach you? How can they get in touch with you? And what is a passion project that you're doing right now that is really serving the collective and what you have to offer?
Yeah. So the main place where I'm active is on Instagram. So that's my Instagram handle is tantric.alchemy. And I have a Facebook page as well, which is Tantric Alchemy, and also my website, which is tantricalchemy.net. And it's good to subscribe to that. And, I send out blog posts and any updates of what I'm doing, where I am in the world, through my newsletter. And the next offering, well, I've just launched my most recent online course, which is the Temple of the Womb. And it's a 6-week course that's, goes through everything to do with the womb. So we go through menstruation, magic, rituals, the Yoni egg practice, self Yoni massage, and then also shadow work and inner child healing. And so it's like everything to do with that sacral region and the womb. And so it's going at the moment, but I'm going to be launching it again in August.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. That sounds like an amazing course. Every single thing about that. And shadow work is something that I just geek out on quite a bit because I just love being able to dig through the shadow to find the light.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So let's have just a couple questions and then I'll let you get about your day.
Okay.
I know, how's the weather out there, first of all? You're out in Bali and I'm over here in Oregon and I'm on Monday night. And you're Tuesday, correct?
Yeah, Tuesday. It's just sunny and like warm. It's always the same. It's either like sunny or raining.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad we're having sun today.
Yeah.
So a couple questions. First of all, we kind of spoke about this a little bit, but what is the deity you're really most connected to right now?
Oh, yeah, it's Kali. I'm just saying, like, with apprehension, because I'm just like, oh my God, I need to, like, this has just been too much. Like, I'm in a really strong, like, just personally death phase of, like, a lot of things have ended in the past year, like relationship, like even moving to Bali, just lots of things are shifting. And so I'm constantly like letting go.
I love that. And what is your sun sign?
Cancer.
I love it. Okay, we have two more. What spiritual text are you reading? Text or book or?
None at the moment.
Wonderful. Tapping into self-text. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And fun question. What was the last thing you searched on Google?
I'm not sure. Maybe Google. Oh, it was something to do with Kundalini symptoms because, I've been having some strange things happening this past
Mm.
couple of weeks. I was like looking up Kundalini stuff.
Well, I'll definitely send you some energy for some clarity on that, so you can find that, hold some space for you for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's really it. There's so much more, and I know that I'd love to share, but I want to let you about your day, and thank you again for your time and chatting with us and sharing your wisdom and your energy and your light. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. For so many, the collective is just healing, and I just thank you so much for all that work. It's so important and needed. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You have a beautiful, wonderful day.
You too.